Greetings and welcome to the settlement. I'm Fen and this is a review of the Spidicules expansion for Kingdom Death, covering both the simulator and also the physical version. Spidicules sells for $12 for the simulator and $135 for the physical copy, although it's currently at the time of recording sold out. However, it's expected to come back into stock. It hasn't been retired as an expansion. Spidicules is a Node 2 quarry, which means it turns up early, in this case Lantern Year 2. It's about the same power level as Node 1 and Node 2 monsters, and also you choose when you're going to fight it and what levels you're going to fight it at. But Spidicules is a little different compared to the other Node 2 monsters that we have currently. Unlike the Flower Knight, the Smog Singers, and the Loot Pinata, aka Screaming Antelope, Spidicules is genuinely a more challenging monster to fight. Now, we'll talk about that and we'll look at all the bits and pieces, but first of all, let's open the box and see what we get. Okay, and here we are. This is everything laid out. You get a rather large Spidicules model. This is unusual when compared to many of the other Kingdom Death monsters because it doesn't physically have spaces on the board. It hangs above the board like so, and you essentially move in to attack this area here with the 4 shaded spots. Let's just move you a little bit. There we are. And you can see that it's grayed up. That's where the monster shadow is. That's where the blind spot's located. And you can attack from these spaces here that are adjacent to this as well. So Spidicules sort of hangs above the entire field and skitters about the place. If I was going to compare this to anything, it feels most like, apart from a creature that's like using its brood of younglings to attack, it also feels like battling a UFO, because it's sort of hovering above everything, deploying troops to attack. I hope that analogy makes some sense. But yeah, this is this is part of the reason that the expansion is so expensive in physical. This is a big model. It's obviously not a happy one for people who have arachnophobia. They're not very pleasant creatures at all, the Spidicules. These are things that you can feel very happy about smashing into a pulp and using the parts for, because they're nasty. They're nasty, horrible things, and they deserve everything they get. We get over here a bunch of models. So we got 4 survivors. We get the entreating naked man. And these, which the label's not showing right now, but they're called Spider Silk Armor Survivors. The set's currently called Silk Armor. I hope it changes to Spider Silk Armor. That's actually a really nice name. I say change because we'll get into it, but there's some updates coming for this down the line, hopefully. We get some innovations, new fighting arts, new disorders, new secret fighting arts, new hunt events. This special hunt event, which goes in the middle of the hunt board over the top of Overwhelming Darkness. This is The Forest Wants What It Wants. It's a way better event than Overwhelming Darkness, in my opinion. I think the design on The Forest Wants What It Wants is great. We get our customary quarry crafting location, bunch of gear, talk about that in a bit. New armor set, talk about that. Some rare gear. These are quite interesting in how you get them. Resources, of course, strange resources, which in this case is a bunch of web silk and the silken nervous system that you get from the level 3. We get 2 settlement events, a Silk Storm and Season of the Spiderling. Both are quite fun, nicely designed events, which I really like. The customary book, AI cards, hit location cards, and some terrain. This terrain will be in the deck, even if you're not fighting a Spidiculus, so they could turn up elsewhere. But we have egg sacs, which can spawn spiderlings in any showdown, and the silk nest, which also can potentially spawn spiderlings. There's always egg sacs and a silk nest in the showdown. The silk nest is always in the middle, and the eggs have their own deployment rules. Right, well, we'll start by talking about how the settlement phase is impacted, and then the hunt phase, and then we'll talk about the showdown. The Spidiculus is quite a malevolent creature. More than the Smog Singers, more than the Screaming Antelope and the Flower Knight. If you choose to put Spidiculus in the campaign, you are asking for a certain amount of pain. You will find your population under pressure. The opening event, unless you've been very clever with how you've metagamed everything, is going to kill a survivor immediately. And whenever you go after Spidiculus, somebody from that hunt party is going to get abducted in revenge, and either you rescue them or they die and potentially someone else gets abducted afterwards. So this is very much the node 2 for people who are like, Screaming Antelope was too easy, I want something harder. So that's very interesting. If it may catch you unawares if you're not prepared for it. Otherwise, the really sort of big thing that we get in the settlement is the addition of silk refining here, one of our innovations. This allows us to perform silk surgery, which is a really cool event that also takes advantage of a new type of survivor called the silk surgeon. They're hard to get, but they're really sweet. It lets you turn silk into hide, not too bothered by that, but also lets you get the silk mill, and the silk mill is where you'll do a lot of your stuff. We also have two others. We've got the legless ball. I'll get into how you get that. It is a key skill you're going to have to develop, essentially cutting all the legs off a Spidiculus and rolling it home like Sisyphus. And Horia, which is very interesting because it gives you the capability to give male survivors the Harvestman fighting art, which is a top tier fighting art, and the females sometimes get the Death Touch secret fighting art, which is an incredible fist and tooth fighting art. So that's something you want to be aware of, is if you're playing this, you can have with this you can have male survivors who are very mobile and can take advantage of stuff like Phoenix armor, where your movement translates into strength when you charge, and also you want your female survivors to be doing fist and tooth. They're your fist and tooth specialists. It's also just good overall to have more female hunters than males anyway, but especially when you got Spidiculus as a quarry, because this location's great and you should be using it whenever possible. Just don't put a male survivor in the dance that you care about in case they do get nommed. On our new fighting arts, the Harvestman I mentioned, this is a top tier fighting art with extra movement, and Vengeance isn't very good, but you know, it's not actively bad, I guess. It just doesn't do anything most of the time. On our disorders, they're kind of fun, based around revenge for death. That's like Spidiculus's kind of things. They're very vengeful. Controlophobia, there's a interesting line of stuff involving the monster controller, and tiny arachnophobia, which affects basically gear from the silk mill for the most part. Silk mill itself gives us a full armor set in silk armor, some weapons, and a few sort of utility items. To briefly touch on things, first of all, silk armor is kind of comparable to leather armor, but it takes a lot longer to put together. We'll take a look at the layouts in a moment, but the big issue is that the silk turban here requires this silken nervous system, which is this resource here, this strange resource here. You're only getting that from the level 3 Spidiculus, and the key thing is, if you're killing level 3 node 2 monsters, you're kind of already at the point where you're moving towards better armor than silk armor. Silk armor's already in a period where it's sort of sunsetting, retiring, so there's a lot of friction there, and it is a problem that I hope is addressed in Campaigns of Death, because it is an interesting armor set. It is an armor set with a lot of challenges and curiosities and difficult ways to navigate. It kind of sucks that by the time you can make it, you're already looking to replace it. But let's also look at the layout. So here we have 2 gear grids. I just wanted to highlight both the interesting and difficult parts of silk armor. So silk armor's main gimmick, apart from being made of silk, is puzzle affinities. It has all of these pieces of gear that require puzzle affinities to connect, and it is pretty much almost impossible to get them all active. You're constantly having to compromise. So this layout here has the robes, turban and sash active, but not the boots. The advantages of that is there's a lot of armor points. You can just get a red connected here, like even a counterweighted axe will just sort that out, and boom, you get extra armor points here and here, so that helps push the silk armor up if it's trying to be a frontliner. Or you can have a layout a bit more like this, where you're sacrificing what the silk robes are doing, but you're activating the boots. The boots, again, they also have a very useful ability. +1 movement's very good, and also you can spend a survival to gain insanity once per round. That doesn't even have any timing rules, so that can be a lifesaver. I appreciate that there is friction in how you're looking to put your gear grids together. That is interesting, but as mentioned before, it takes so long to get this that it's hard to really get excited about silk armor, even though it is one of the best looking armor sets. Even these older models here in silk armor just look fantastic and unique. And the newer releases that we've seen, like Badur, and I think it's Riku, Poison Partisan Riku, maybe that's the name, they look even better in their silk armor. So I'm hopeful that gets addressed in Campaigns of Death. You're going to hear me say that quite a bit, because this is an expansion that falls just shy of greatness. Onto the hunt events. So these are, I'm not going to go through in detail, I've done that, but they're punishing, but they mostly feel fair, which is nice. I like hunt events to put players in difficult situations and force them to make difficult choices. I don't like them to just punish players for a dice roll or picking the wrong gear when you went out, and I think there's a really good hunt phase here. The only thing I sort of feel is missing is you don't get a real feel of the Abyssal Woods where the Spidicules is located. There's a little bit of it, but the generic hunt events kind of sort of bland that out a bit. Then we're on to the Showdown. So this is, as I said before, the kind of Showdown layout with the extra random terrain that you get. You don't always get these two here. That's just what generated when I clicked setup. But you do always get 2 eggs per monster level, and you'll always have this nest in the middle. The nest has a chance of generating population. These give you web silk. You want web silk because web silk can be converted into silk for crafting directly, which is done. Sorry, not converted. So I was thinking of the you need silk for crafting the armor sets and all the other bits and pieces. Another thing to note about this resource deck is it's almost entirely unique. There's 2 matching large appendages and 2 small appendages, and as you can see, everything else is its own thing. This gives you a lot of variety in what you're getting, and is interesting, but one of the things that's a little tricky is a lot of the resources are mainly used down here in these 3 rings, which you need to make a legless ball. I'll talk about that system when I briefly go over the Showdown, but that means you have to plan in advance. If you could look here, this is 5 sources, of which there's only one Venom Sac in the deck. There's only one Arachnid Heart and Eyeballs and Stomach, Unlaid Eggs and Spinnerets. So you're looking at least 3 hunts against Spidicules to try and get here, and that's if you get the maximum amount of luck on what drops. Something else that's a little bit of a problem, but more for players who only really are expanding from the core game, the Amber Poleaxe and the Hooded Scrap Guitar are kind of just their variants of the King Spear and the Lion Beast Guitar. Neither of them are bad, but you have a lot of friction where if you've got the White Lion and Spidicules in the same campaign, they're not really helping weapon progression because they're both just providing start points. You do get some variety, like the White Lion gives the bow, and both the bow and the King Spear are good for fighting Spidicules because you want some range or you want spears. But personally, I don't want to pair Spidicules with the White Lion. That's something I always want to avoid. I think this is better paired with the Frog Dog or the Crimson Crocodile or the Gorm. I've paired it with the Gorm a lot. That's a great little grouping. I very much like Gorm, Spidicules, Sunstalker as like the core 3, and then I traditionally will add like 2 more Quarry Monsters because I like variety and it is more powerful. Silk Whip is really cool, but it's not better than the Hunter Whip. It's kind of just a variant. So, and then we got Throwing Knife and the Amber Edge, both of which, this is a scimitar and this is a thrown weapon. Neither of them have weapon proficiencies. So there's a lot of problems with regards to the weapons where you're just, you're like either getting dead end weapons. Like Amber Edge is great for a Fist and Tooth survivor, so they've got a weapon they can use. It's also very useful for clearing out spiderlings, but it's not got a weapon proficiency, and that does matter. And thrown weapons, I've talked about this many times before, not having a proficiency is also a shame. Over here, the Silk Bomb is laughably bad. Very few bombs in Kingdom Death are actually good. Silk Bomb is not one of them. The bodysuit is ridiculously good. It is easily the single best piece of gear in here apart from these 2 rings, but it doesn't require a legless ball. This is pretty much the first thing I'm looking to craft. It basically turbocharges armor sets. If I just quickly show you, where is it? Here, right. So, item Silk Flammable. Flammable only really matters versus a few specific monsters, but it's something you can play around. Unique, which is fine. You reduce damage from every hit suffered by 2 to a minimum of 1. You can't have any heavy or metal armor in your gear grid. You can have other heavy and metal like weapons and items, but not armor. Just think of what that does to leather armor. You've got 4s across the board, 5s with a shield, and suddenly now, if you're taking a hit of 3 damage, it's 1 damage. This is insanely powerful, and that brings me to my main sort of point I've always had, is I think that this silken nervous system should be on the bodysuit, not on the head. It's an easy house rule swap to make, but this is too powerful to be able to get it so early because it just trivializes stepping up to level 2s and even stepping up to level 3s, and makes fighting node 2-3 monsters really easy as well. And as I've said before, I think this should come earlier. So overall, there's a lot that needs work here. This is fine, quite good actually. This is okay for a thrown weapon, but thrown weapons are kind of non-entity. This would be fine if the Hunter's Whip was different. I prefer to see this be a lot stronger. It is unique, it's got great mood control ability. This is perfectly fine, great if you're not playing with the Lion Beast guitar from the White Lion. It's actually one of the guitars that rewards you for playing paired, which I think is really cool. This is a perfectly fine weapon to have, you'll definitely appreciate it. It just doesn't have a proficiency. This is busted good, this is terrible. This is actually fair, this one. I say fair. You can run it in an unbelievably broken build, but if you're not trying to break it, it's kind of just a pile of affinities and an occasional rare little piece of damage, unblockable, uncounterable damage. You basically have to be the monster controller and get bled, and it'll do something. The blue ring, I think, is the least busted of all of them, but also it's very, very, very powerful in a way that's hard to measure. And the green ring is an incredible tanking weapon. Legless ball stuff is very strong, but it's hard to get, so that's fair. I do want to see the red ring change though, because it's either just existing and being kind of okay and fair, or it's breaking the game in half with the fact that damage dealt to monsters that doesn't go into the hit location deck is absurdly powerful. As for Spidiculus itself, let's get on to a little bit talk about the Showdown. So the key thing about Spidiculus is, for just here, we've got a few mechanics that really make it unique. First of all, we've got the twitching leg pile, which is the Spidiculus has 6 legs, 6 cunning forelegs, and then 2 tricky forelegs. So other way around? No, sorry, the other way around. Anyway, it's got 8 legs. I should have just said 8 legs from the start. And you gradually can cut the legs off, slowing the Spidiculus down, and if you get all of them off, that's how you get to roll a still living Spidiculus back to the settlement and start taking advantage of it for silk and constructing those rings. It's a really fun sub-game. It's technically possible against the level 1, because the level 1 does have 10 wounds, so you could remove 8 legs with 8 of those wounds. Possible, but it's unlikely. It's more likely against the level 2. It's still difficult. It's a fun sub-game. There's strategies involved in it. I think that's really sweet. We've got Spawn and Spiderlings and the Mood. These all tie together, so Spidiculus, she continuously generates more Spiderlings and deploys them as her main way of dealing damage. The Spiderlings, as you can see, get more and more dangerous as they level up. And finally, we got moods. So most monsters have moods. Spidiculus is unusual in that it'll have one mood, and whenever a new mood comes into play, the previous moods are replaced, and they affect how the Spiderlings happen. So this one, as you can see, survivors cannot move as long as Spiderlings are adjacent to them, because they're spinning a lot of web everywhere. This is, honestly, the Spidiculus Showdown is definitely one of the best in the game, and if the settlement side of things got a little bit more treatment, this would be a top tier expansion. So last of all, before we go, as said, I think this is great in combination with the Gorm and the Crimson Crocodile in particular, but it's also fantastic with the Frog Dog. I think it's the best Node 2 monster for experienced players who want something challenging to fight, and its gear, whilst it still has problems, it still has less problems than, well, the Smog Singers, they have noisy gear, that's got its own problems. The Screaming Antelope's armor set was hit with a nerf bat and doesn't have enough armor points anymore. Smog Singer armor's great. The Flower Knight's really hard to use. I'll talk about that separately at some point, but this, I think, is the best of the Node 2 monsters for challenge level. It just has some areas that need to be filed off. As for who I think this is for, if you've played through the base campaign and you picked yourself up a Frog Dog or a Gorm, or perhaps even the Gambler's Chest, I think this is a very reasonable one to get for the next start, starting like monsters, like early game monsters, that's what I mean. But it is really expensive in physical. I think $12 on the simulator is very easy to justify, although I will note this is not enough Spiderlings. The level 3 is great at pumping out Spiderlings, and technically these aren't capped at just 6. That's one of the things I've always disliked, is I feel at the price it is at, there should be at least 12 of these in the box for the physical version, and I see no reason why I can't just clone and duplicate these little guys and have more when I'm fighting the higher level Spidiculuses. That's always been a bit of a sticking point for me. The physical version, I hate to say this, but I I think you should only pick it up if you're getting it as part of a bundle, or if it's at Black Friday sale prices. It doesn't really hold up to the other big expensive boxes like the Dragon King and the Sunstalker, who both not only come with a quarry monster, but they also have a campaign tied to them. We don't have a campaign for Spidicules yet, and it's probably going to be in Campaigns of Death. That's the big question mark as well. Campaigns of Death is this thing where we're not really sure if it's going to heavily impact Spidicules or not. We do know there is going to be a Spidicules themed campaign involving a legless ball. That's pretty cool. And it will need a Spidicules expansion to do it, but the honest truth is it's not available right now, and if it is available in physical, I would still wait for Black Friday, and I don't like saying that. I certainly would never pay over MSRP for this on the secondary market. I don't think you should buy Kingdom Death expansions on the secondary market anyway, definitely not for a markup. It's better to just support Alan Poots games directly, so that they put that money back into making more stuff, which is always nice. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's a mixed bag. It's a very good Showdown. It's a great challenge. It's unique. It's fun. It's just also not quite there, just a little bit shy, and in physical a bit overpriced. So I can't give this one the kind of recommendation I'd give, say, the Gorm or the Sunstalker or Dung-Beaten Knight or Slenderman, but I don't think it is as lacking as, say, the Lion God as a purchase. There's still plenty in here. It just sometimes feels like you kind of have to house rule a bit to properly get a smooth experience out of this. So that's it. That's ridiculous. If you want more in-depth stuff, I've done a deep dive into the monster, the Showdown and the Hunt phase. That's under the Dark Bestiary playlist. I've also done all of the settlement side of things. That's in the Silk Mill and You, which is in the And You playlist, the settlement playlist. So you can check those out. I've probably forgotten to put links in the description, but you can click on the channel and check them there. And I do appreciate everything. Also, I just want to shout out my pillar patrons. Thank you so much for your support. The changes to YouTube in August have essentially killed this channel. It's tremendously unprofitable for me to put these out. I couldn't do them without you guys. For everyone else, I understand, your situation is as it is. Likes, subscription, sharing, those things are all very appreciated. But that's it, yeah. That's ridiculous. It's kind of a lukewarm, almost recommendation. I think more of I'm saying I wait to see what Campaigns of Death does for it, unless you're super into it. If you have arachnophobia and you don't want to play against this, well, you can kind of get away with not putting it on the board, but also you probably haven't watched this far because the damn thing's been on screen for most of the time, and I understand. I'm the chief spider expeller in our household. It's my job to send them outside or back out of vision if they're live in the walls type things. God, I'm really not doing people with arachnophobia a favour, am I? Let's stop before I carry on and traumatise someone again. Yeah, that's it. It's ridiculous. Nearly good enough. Has a lot of nice things. I tend to want to play it with house rules when I play with other people. Thanks for watching.